and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger, and this week we're doing a special bonus episode, and we're welcoming my colleague, Chris Harto, who is a senior policy analyst on transportation and energy in our Washington, D.C. office. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jen.
Yeah. So we talk, Chris, so often on this podcast about new EVs. Seems like every other show we're talking about new EVs. And we also reference our own survey, particularly for reliability, so often. But just to clarify, that survey is of our members. There was a special survey conducted specifically asking Americans about EVs. And Chris, I just want you to explain first, before we get to any of the results, how that differs from our normal internal surveys of our members.
Sure, Jen. So this was a survey of over 8,000 Americans. It's nationally representative, so it's designed to capture all demographics. And just to give you an idea, that 8,000 sample is about 10 times what a typical, political poll that you might read about in the news is. Those tend to be about 800 to 1,000 people. So it's a big survey. It's
no slouch in terms of survey response, for sure. So let's kind of get into those results a little bit. The first that I read was that 36% of car buyers, were strongly interested in electric vehicles, but only 14% said that their next vehicle would definitely be a purely electric vehicle. That seems disconnected and a little low to me. Was there any indication of the why?
Sure. So first off, that 14% may not sound like a very large number, but it actually translates into about 36 million Americans who are ready to buy an EV today. When you compare that to the less than 1 million EVs being built by automakers right now, it starts to, make a little bit more sense why, every EV has this long waiting list, or they're flying off dealer lots really quickly. That still leaves a lot of Americans who aren't quite ready to go electric. In that survey, we did find barriers for those other Americans, and they tend to fall into two categories: charging infrastructure and upfront costs. Luckily for Americans, recent bills passed by Congress over the past year address both of those barriers in different ways. First, there's about a $7.5 billion investment being made in infrastructure across the country. That money is just going out to states right now, and they're going to start putting in chargers in the ground over the next year. In addition, some updates to the federal EV tax credits. Those tax credits really should help automakers deliver more affordable mainstream EVs to Americans.
Did the survey indicate that those who knew more about them were the ones that were more interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that 14% who are definitely going to buy an EV overall. But for consumers who had the most direct experience with EVs, for those people, that 14% goes all the way up to 58% who would definitely buy, and 87% who are at least strongly considering buying an EV. So that mirrors exactly what you guys are seeing at the track in the testing numbers. When you road test these vehicles, they score really well on the road tests. They score really well on the consumer satisfaction. People who own them love them.
The other aspect, certainly, and we again talk about it at length, is all about finances. And you already mentioned that as being a barrier. What are the cost benefits that were referenced in the survey of people's concerns or desires of what they need to address in terms of finances?
Yeah. So really, when it comes to the economics of owning an EV, the biggest challenge is that upfront cost. There's no getting around it right now. EVs, typically cost more to buy upfront. Hopefully that will change down the road as automakers scale up. There was just a report from the International Council on Clean Transportation. They did some analysis, and they expect EVs to hit cost parity with all EVs to hit cost parity with gas vehicles, by the end of the decade, with significant range, with 300 miles of range or more. But that upfront cost is a barrier. The tax credits can help. The tax credits will hopefully help. But that upfront cost isn't the only cost of owning a vehicle. And EVs really bring down those other costs associated with owning a vehicle, specifically charging at home. That runs you about $1 to $1.50 a gallon equivalent for fuel. So if you're paying, $3.50, $4, $4.50 a gallon for your gas vehicle, that much cheaper fuel cost adds up a lot over time. In addition, from our surveys, we found that real consumers are spending, roughly half as much to repair and maintain the EVs that they own. So those lower fuel, those lower maintenance costs can really add up. We found that a typical electric SUV will save you about $2,000 in operating costs per year. So that, over time, that those savings can outweigh the higher upfront costs.
We have a funny story from last night. We did headlight testing last night, and it was the first time the group was all EVs, just by the way our recent purchases. And we're getting ready, and we do an intensity measurement inside the building where we start the car. So we have a vent that pulls away all of the exhaust. So I roll the vent up behind the Ford F-150 Lightning, and Gordon looks at me and goes, I don't think you're going to need that, because we had 2 EVs to test. And I was like, oh yeah, no exhaust, and pushed it away. It was kind of funny. Nice. The other thing we've talked about while we're talking about cost is reliability. What the reliability, as we have so many more new models, what the latest reliability numbers are going to show. And is it EV components, or is it the technology, the other technology components like infotainment and gear selectors and door handles?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing some growing pains. Many of these automakers are, releasing their first real mainstream EVs. They're building them on new platforms. They're putting in all this new technology. So, we're definitely, from that initial quality, right. Initial reliability, how many warranty claims are you going to have to deal with? How, those kind of things, hopefully automakers over the next few years, as they get more experience building these vehicles, will get better at it. But definitely something to watch. And
hopefully those issues don't tarnish EVs in general and say, all they do is break type of thing. So again, super anxious for this next round of reliability. The other thing I was thinking of is, will an EV charger at your home be the next benefit in resale value for your home? I think so.
Certainly it can't hurt.
Right.
As more people are buying EVs, more people want EVs, having your home already wired for EVs, frankly, for apartment complexes,
yes.
For apartment complexes that are trying to rent out apartments to especially, younger urban consumers, having those chargers available for people who rent and to be able to plug in their EV, that's going to be a differentiator.
Yeah. If you can say apartment with, EV charging, I imagine you're exactly right. And any thoughts in the survey about how people feel about the charging process, timing, etc.?
I like to think about it a bit like your phone. Your car, if you have a place to charge at home, plug it in at night, you go about your day, hopefully, you get home by the end of the day, you're still have some charge. You don't have to worry about plugging in your phone most days, outside of the house. But, some of those days, it's those days when you do, when you're going on a longer trip, you don't have access to the charger. That's what really, I think, leads to some of the anxiety for consumers. Where am I going to charge it when I'm driving to grandma's house for Thanksgiving? Yep. Those kind of things.
Anything else you want to share in the survey, or, as you read it, and again, this is America's impressions, not ours this time. Mm-hmm. What do you see changing in the landscape over the next 5 or so years?
We're starting to see a virtuous cycle take place when looking at this survey versus some of our past surveys. Mm-hmm. In that, as more EVs are sold, more people come into contact with them, more people get experience with them, and that tends to lead to greater interest. And greater interest leads to greater buying of EVs. Greater buying of EVs leads automakers to build more EVs. We've seen all these automakers really increase their EV plans in the past couple of years as they've seen the strong demand for them. And then you have the policy aspect coming in to kind of support it all with the infrastructure spending, the tax credits, and all kind of works together to really accelerate this transition that's taking place. So I think, 5 years down the road, I think people will be a little bit surprised how quickly this takes place.
Yeah, you shared something with me too that I wasn't even thinking about. We've heard, the baby boomers are aging and maybe they're not even purchasing vehicles. Whereas the younger demographic who's now got money and buying has a very, very keen green, earth-friendly set of values. So maybe it's more of an appeal to that group than it would be the older drivers.
Yeah, we definitely see that in our survey. There is a big, demographic shift there with, older drivers a little bit more skeptical of going EV, with younger drivers being much more interested in buying and owning an EV.
Yeah, and we've said too, and the electrification of more vehicles that are the type of vehicles people want, like the pickup trucks, like the F-150 Lightning. Oh, now I can get an EV in the vehicle I want to drive.
Yeah, really, up until about 2 years ago, if you wanted an EV, your only options were really either a luxury car or a small subcompact car. And frankly, neither of those segments are very popular with Americans. But today you can get a pickup truck, you can get an SUV. There's more SUVs coming. There's minivans coming. We've got EVs in all segments soon. And so that's really helping to drive this transition.
Yeah, and we will keep talking about them on Talking Cars and any other bonus. So, Chris, I can't thank you. Again, this is a unique opportunity, which is why the bonus, to talk about really to our listeners, your sense, what the American people are feeling about EVs, not just us. So anything in addition to this episode or comments on this episode, please share them. Any EV questions, we could absolutely have Chris come back another day. TalkingCars@iCloud.com, written, video. Chris, really appreciate your time today in kind of going through that survey. So hopefully we have more fodder for the future to have you on. This episode was produced by David Abrams, and it will be edited by Anatoly Shumsky. And again, a bonus, and keep watching, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.